Welcome and good evening. This is Morten from INKISH, and I say good evening because it's a bit late here in Denmark, but when you talk to people from all over the world, you have to adjust. So that's exactly what I do now, and I have the pleasure to talk to Scott from Crawford Technologies in Northampton, right? Wasn't it?
It's New Hampshire, but that's close, yes.
That was so close. New Hampton, I think that's in Australia, but that was close, but no cigar. Fantastic. Scott, Crawford Technology, you have to bring me a little bit up to speed on what you do. I have checked your website, and I was actually surprised that I didn't know too much about you guys. So bring me a little bit up to speed, please.
Sure. Crawford Technologies is actually a Canadian company. Mm-hmm. We're headquartered in Toronto, and we have offices in the United States and in the UK and in Germany.
Do you also have in New Hampshire, Australia, just so I get that? No, okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. But that will be the next one, right?
That is aspirational, of course. Okay. So we are a software developer, and we develop software to help companies do a better job of communicating with their customers. And that's through all channels. We create software that generally addresses the challenges in enterprise output management, which includes print, electronic delivery of customer communications and things like that. We also do a lot of software specifically to enable people who are blind and partially sighted or cognitively disabled to interact with their documents that they need to live their lives through assistive technologies like screen readers and braille note takers and the like.
One thing you said, you said a lot of interesting things already, but one of the things I paid attention to a little bit more was that you when you talk about output, does that mean, let me try to understand this. So basically, let's say that I'm communicating with a municipal. Does it mean that if they use the software you have developed, does that mean that I can basically say, oh, I would like to have my output on email, or I would like to have my output on print, or I would like it to have it in a totally different way? Is that how you do the output management?
That is one of the things that we certainly do. We provide a workflow backbone, so to speak, so that we can integrate all the pieces of a communications workflow from the time that it's created in a formatted way, and then delivered via electronic channel or print channel, whatever it happens to be. We have the capability of enabling companies to figure out the preferences of the recipients and honor those preferences by providing the documents in the format and at the right time via the right channel how they'd like to receive it. There are some people that do all of their banking through mobile phones, for example, and apps. And so you can't take something, a file that you would send to a printer, and send that exact file to a mobile phone.
You need to format it basically to the devices.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So our workflow software is automated and enables based on business rules or preferences, as you pointed out, to be delivered the way it's expected and the way it's desired. So that's a real strong part of what we do, and it's actually what we're going to be showing at Hunkeler. We have a solution called ProConductor that basically does the integration and automation and orchestration to make those things happen. We have a number of other tools that are there to help companies take older formats that come off of mainframes, for example, and basically format them for use in modern applications like mobile apps or the like.
I take that with this there is a few challenges. Because one thing is that you want to address the different devices and the different channels you want to deliver the thing on. But I take there's so many legacy systems also in the world that to have some kind of uniformed data or maybe even multiple sources is among the challenges that you face.
You are absolutely correct. And part and parcel of what we do when we deliver these solutions is we help our customers normalize their formats and standardize the back-end processing in such a way that it takes advantage of the hardware that they purchased already and the software that they need to get that information in the hands of the designated recipients. So a big part of that print workflow, if you will, or output workflow, has to do with standardization and normalization, which means you can do it quickly, you can do it with fewer errors, you can do it in a much more cost-effective way if you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you have a new format.
And saying that, I can't help thinking about another thing. Is also that I believe that the security that your software is built on needs to be rock solid. I mean, you cannot mix data that is from different sources or not be 100% certain that it gets formatted and combined in the normalized in the right way. How difficult is that?
In this day and age, it doesn't matter how difficult it is. It has to be done, right?
It has to be done, yeah.
It has to be done. It is frightening when you look at the cost of a security breach. According to IBM and Ponemon Institute, which does a study every single year, the cost of a data breach, the average cost of a data breach today is approximately, we'll say 8 to 8.2 million euros.
Whoa. Okay, so that is serious money. I mean, and I take that is something that when you I don't know, but when you do software that handle these kind of things and you need to provide that security, I take that you have some hefty product liability insurances, right?
Oh, everyone does. You have to, and the cost of cyber, insurance is going up all the time. One of the keys is the ability to encrypt data when it's in transit, when it's being transferred, and at rest, when it's being archived or it's waiting to be printed or things like that. And we have built some pretty interesting solutions. One we'll be showing at Hunkeler called Pro Lockdown. And Pro Lockdown has the ability to enable a company to lock down a file at the file level, at the document level, at the subdocument level, at the page level. And each particular level can have its own encryption key. And because of how our software works, we only unencrypt the pages that we're processing at the time. So they always stay encrypted. And one of the interesting things about data breaches is you have to report them, of course, when they occur. But the fines and the exposure and the litigation involved is significantly different when your data is encrypted. It's one thing to have data stolen, and if the threat actors can't use it because it's encrypted, than it is if they go in and they breach some database and all of a sudden you have millions of customers' credit card information floating around the dark web.
One thing I can't help think about again is that, and I'm absolutely not a specialist in this, I'm just trying to think what I think is logic in this sense. And I was thinking that when you have that lock feature that you said that could be on all these different levels, does that mean that, for example, in Europe where you have the GDPR thing, and then basically one of the issues that I think is actually a quite serious issue is that if you deliver documents for print, you have a data agreement according to the GDPR that ensures that you trash the data securely after being used. But the monitoring of that data is actually destroyed afterwards. I think that if you don't have systems to actually handle things like you described it, I think it's almost impossible to police in some way, right? So when you have so when you have these log things, does that mean that you can say that, okay, this data has been provided to this IP address for print, and now we kind of flag it that it has been printed, so now you can't see it again or see it anymore, or how does that work?
The short answer is yes. The long answer,
you can answer in layman terms because I wouldn't understand anything but.
The short answer is yes. So, because we know the specific address and can track every single page as it's being unencrypted to be processed for print and then re-encrypted. We have the ability through log files to see where that is. We know where that piece of data is, and based on the parameters that our customers have decided on relative to when and how they destroy those things, yes, you can track that. You can certainly track it. I mean,
so GDPR
is
So you could
GDPR has a lot of things.
I know that. But so basically, I'm just sorry to interrupt you, but that basically means that you can build some kind of logics to your flow of data based on these parameters, basically.
Yes, correct. That is correct.
That must be nice. And I mean, I don't know, it sounds like a relatively expensive investment in the software, but it seemed more expensive not to do it, right? So I was just wondering, is there a lot of competition in that particular area that Crawford exercises in?
Interestingly enough, relative to security, less than you would think. I mean, there are many products and many solutions out there to secure data at various places, as business information in databases and whatnot throughout the entire process. But when it comes to taking files that are going to output, there isn't a lot. Most of the archives or repositories, I guess is the best way to describe them, have some levels of encryption. Some of it's strong, some of it's not. Obviously, you have hierarchies of who can access data and who can't access data. You have tools like redaction, which we provide as well, that allow you to blank out personally identifiable information within a document.
Could that be like an automated process about the redaction thing, or is that like a manual thing you do and then it is included as part of the document, or how does that work?
It can be automated. The software that we provide is designed to be automated. So through business rules.
You say, okay, I get a permission to see a police report for research, but I don't need a birth date and an address and a phone number. And then you can basically say that redact this, and then basically the documents you get access to will be then automatically redacted.
Correct.
Smart. I have to ask you.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. One thing that I would leave you with that is a truism, though it sounds rather trite, is the question is not whether a company is going to be breached at some point in time, because there are so many threat actors out there today. The question is when.
Yeah.
And the key is, are you prepared to respond?
And I take that is the business opportunity for Crawford, is basically to make sure that your customers and all the non-customers basically get the understanding of the value of having full control on your flow of data. And I think that, I turned it a little bit back from the beginning in our conversation, because basically I think if you take it from a consumer perspective, just the fact that you can control your output device yourself is extremely customer friendly, right? Because we spoke about before we turned on the recording, how some people prefer to get things on paper, some prefer to get it electronically, and regardless of how you get it, you need to be sure that the data has not been altered or tangled with, right? So the combination of the security for the security perspective and the breach perspective is great, and from a consumer perspective that you can choose how you see it. I think that combination itself is really great. I have a question, because you're going to Innovation Days, and obviously there will be a lot of printers, and there will obviously also be a lot of printing companies that are handling data on a daily basis. If you are running a printing company, let's say you run a transactional printing company, how difficult is it to, inside the company, manage the encrypted data and make sure that you can actually get it legit on paper?
Actually, it's not difficult at all. The way that the software is created, it's designed to be able to work with your existing systems and your existing output formats. So let's say someone uses a document composition environment to turn business data into the file that's going to get printed, right? Our software takes that file that they've created, does the encryption, and when it needs to be processed, there's the other half of the software that will unencrypt it, that will work with the software that drives the Canon printers or the HP printers or the Kodak printers, whatever they happen to be. They're pretty much manufacturer agnostic. So it's just a matter of understanding where in the workflow those pieces of software need to go. Yeah. And it doesn't require alteration of anything upstream. And it's designed to work with all of the software that drives the printers and drives the inserters and those types of devices, all the way through, postal processing.
And what about the installation when you buy the software? Is it a long? I mean, is it difficult? Does it need a lot of, let's say, effort to get it up and running?
Not really. One of the interesting things about the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, is that most software vendors became very adept at remotely installing and configuring software. So
that is part of it, basically. So you don't need to be on a specific RIP or anything that. As long as you're within the network and you have the right, let's say, access rights for each device, you can basically manage it remotely. That's what you're saying.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's correct. And the other change that's happened over the course of the last 3 years, particularly, is we've seen a lot of companies, enterprises of many sizes, migrate workloads from behind their own data center firewalls to the cloud.
Yeah.
So most of what we provide today to our customers is available either as an on-premise solution or a public cloud solution or a hybrid cloud solution. Wow. Yeah, so you have the ability and the flexibility to manage the workload in the most cost-effective way that you want, and there are no barriers necessarily other than the ones you put in place to restrict how we implement. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Doesn't take a long time, and the results, are pretty dramatic in terms of how you can protect your data.
Scott, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about the Innovation Days, but I have one more question before we do that. The type of companies and the size of company, is this only for the big boys, or is it for, do you scale it, or how does that work for you?
We believe that it is not right to penalize companies based on their size. So we have licensing schemes for smaller enterprises all the way up to huge enterprises. I will tell you that many of our customers are the largest banks and largest insurance companies in the world.
Could imagine, because it sounds like it's a very fantastic system you have developed, right? So that makes sense.
We have customers who are literally processing billions of pages of output per year. Wow. Okay. By the same token, we work with print service providers and commercial printers that do transactional printing on behalf of a smaller region of and basket of customers. And the software works pretty much the same way for them as it does for the enterprises. We have volume-based plans. We have subscription plans in terms of our licensing. So what we do is designed to be usable by enterprises of pretty much any size.
And that means, of course, that if you decide to go into, I don't know if you know that, but I actually wrote a blog for Hunkeler last year, and I was a little bit surprised about it, because when I did some research, it seems that the transactional market is still a growth market. I would have thought, because I'm from Europe, I would have thought that more and more goes electronically, but I think the growth was around 1.6%, which is pretty steep actually. So I take that if you are a smaller company and you want to get into this segment, you can scale with your investment in Crawford, and that is of course always nice that you don't have to throw the big check from day one, but you can grow with your business, right?
That's correct, and it's a real advantage that we feel that we have in the marketplace. The transactional market is a growth market, interestingly enough, and we found that in the pandemic there have been many printers, particularly in North America, that were commercial printers doing educational things or direct marketing things, and obviously those were hit very hard in terms of losing business, and they turned to transactional, as well as turning to wide format and things like that to replace that revenue. And it's a competitive marketplace, obviously, in transactional, but by the same token, you're right. As long as people keep buying things and putting things on credit cards and buying insurance, you'll have a need to do transactional print.
But it also makes sense because, you see, one of the topics that we are particularly interested from INKISH side is that when we go to Hunkeler Innovationdays, I think the very nature of Hunkeler Innovationdays will be a little bit different this year compared to in the past. First of all, because it's been some years where they couldn't do it because of the pandemic, but since the technology today enable going from offset to digital, gives more digital printers a position in the market, and therefore they also get more variable data. When they get more variable data, there is a need for security when you handle something that is at least financially or personal sensitive to anybody. And I think that we have, I would say, struggled a little bit in Europe with the GDPR, but you have the California Privacy Act, and I think that there's a lot of discussions in America about having similar regulations of data as you have in Europe. And basically, I guess that means that you need to have even further control of your data.
You do. I mean, the beauty and curse of GDPR is that it forced companies to account for all of the data that they were collecting, right? And to justify why you're collecting it, to make sure that you indeed need it. You have to be able to get rid of it if you aren't using it. And if a customer
let the
comes,
user to do it themselves if they don't want the data to be registered, basically, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And California was the first in the United States to do that. There are currently 12 other states in North America or in the U.S. that have legislation that they're considering that's similar to California. What we're hoping is that the federal government in the United States will come to its senses and do something like GDPR. Obviously, companies all over Europe were scrambling for 2 years trying to figure out what GDPR meant and how they were going to become compliant, and it's still an issue.
It is an issue, and I spoke to a lawyer once about the GDPR, and he basically said the problem is that until somebody sues somebody and you have like a high court sentence in either what favor it is, basically that's when the real test of the GDPR laws is put into action, and how much the judges will basically charge for it. Because one of the things that I'm a little bit surprised about is that I think that I get more spam mail now than I did before, basically because there are a lot of people taking the chances with it and just make enough money to do that. Well, that's another story. Scott, we need to go to Innovation Days. What are you showing at your booth?
We're showing a number of things at our booth, but primarily we're concentrating on our enterprise output workflow software. So that means ProConductor, our backbone, Operations Express, which provides the means to do document reengineering and to do the standardization and normalization that I talked about earlier. We are going to be talking about ProLockdown, which is the security software that you mentioned earlier. And we are going to be talking about ways to make PDF files process much more quickly.
I saw that on your website that you have that software.
Yeah, we've had it for a long time, and a number of service bureaus, print service providers have used it over the years very, very successfully. But the reality is so much of output today is formatted as PDF. And what we find is, even though it's a standard, an ISO standard, right? Every PDF is different. Yeah. And so depending on how they manage resources or whatever, it could be sitting on a RIP for hours, or it could be processing like that. So we have software that is an integral part of print workflow to ensure that PDFs are standardized and will fly through the print and finishing processes. So those are the big things we're talking about at Hunkeler.
And when you go there, I guess that you meet existing customers, but it seems also there's still like a potential for selling more solutions, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Hunkeler is a tremendous venue. When Innovation Days started years and years and years ago, it was such a great thing. And it was a change from a big, huge thing like Drupa, right? I mean, the scale is different. You can actually spend time with people and get to know them. Oh, yes, it is. Lucerne at Carnival time is awesome, too.
Yeah. Fantastic, yeah. And I mean, the great thing about the Carnival, I think it's in the weekend before, isn't it? Or is it the weekend after? Okay, because basically, if it was in the same days, you would have empty... it's like, when you go to exhibitions in Las Vegas, I don't see many people at the conferences, to be honest. But maybe it's just
me. They're elsewhere. They are elsewhere for sure. So we're so happy to come to Hunkeler this year, and
one thing that I can tell you, I am so thrilled that I invited you to come here and talk to me, because I learned a lot, and I think you are a great guy to learn from, and I think what Crawford does seems to be extremely relevant in a time where data security is definitely something that everybody needs to take serious. So. Scott, thank you very much for participating here on INKISH, and I look forward to see you in Lucerne. So thank you very much, sir.
Martin, it was a pleasure, and I'm honored that you had invited us, and I will share a beer with you when we're in Lucerne.
Oh, okay. See you.